My name is Beckie Irvin, and I am the acting executive director for the xTexas Trail Association. My colleague Melissa here, she has been with this organization since it was just an idea, and she is our chief storytelling officer and does an incredible job of getting the word out about this trail. The purpose of this evening is to talk about the concept of trailhead towns, or otherwise known around the country as what a lot of people refer to as a gateway community, a community along the trail that provides hospitality to trail users, and many of them also leverage their proximity to a long distance trail to um, help and positively impact their local rural economies. So we're going to be exploring that today. I also am super excited because we have the opportunity to hear from people who are actively doing this work. Our friends from the Arizona National Scenic Trail are here today. Matt and Anna, thank you so much for being here with us. And I just want to give a quick history of the Arizona Trail if you're not familiar with it. So, the Arizona Trail is a non-motorized path that starts at the Arizona-Mexico border and goes all the way up to the Arizona-Utah border. It is 800 miles. And if you've been with us for a while, you know the xTexas Trail is going to cover large range of ecosystems and ecoregions. And the Arizona Trail is really special. It does the same thing. So, deserts, mountains, the Grand Canyon, you know that one, forest. And then it also is really special in the way that there's diverse communities and cultures all along the way that travelers get to experience and also invest their dollars in those communities. Um, the story of how the Arizona Trail got started is super similar to the X-Tex as well. So it was started by a man with a dream, Dale Shewalter. You can correct me in a minute if I said that incorrectly. Um, he had this idea in the 1970s, and in 1985, he set out to cross the state. And then he did exactly what Charlie has done in terms of he just started traveling around and telling people this wild idea. And what happened was it caught on and people got super invested. Hikers, backpackers, equestrians, mountain bikers, trail builders, the land agencies, um, all got really excited. And over the course of many, many years, um, they have built this non-motorized 800-mile path that is now a huge asset to the state and the rural communities along it. So, without further ado, let's get to our special guest, Matthew and Anna. Matthew, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself to our crew?
Yep, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here to talk to you. Matt Nelson, Executive Director of the Arizona Trail Association. I've been involved with the trail organization for about 25 years. First as just a general trail user, then a volunteer, and then a variety of other things, mostly volunteerism. And then eventually accepted the position as Executive Director. I'm in my 16th year now. Our organization is 32 years old. And we've continued to do really amazing things beyond just building and maintaining trail, but developing programs that engage local communities and youth and veterans so that everybody really gets to celebrate this trail as a shared resource. And also like as a cultural resource. I think the more that I do this, the more that I realize that these trails are not just recreational pathways, but they're this important cultural resource. And as the cultures change throughout the entire 800 miles, so does the trail and the nature of the trail and how people interact with it. And I think that the human element is often forgotten about when we talk about these long distance trails, but I've come to learn that it's probably the most important. You know, like when we talk about our vision, it's like an 800-mile pathway connecting deserts, forests, mountains, communities, and people. And the people part, I think, is the most important.
Amazing.
Yeah. And
Thank
also
you again.
joining me is a really wonderful representative. She's on
Yes.
our board of directors, also an executive director, nonprofit, and she lives in a trail town, in a gateway community of the small town of Patagonia. So Anna Darian is joining us today also.
Thank
Awesome.
you so much. Anna, would you like to take a minute to tell folks what you do? And also, I think they'll be really interested to know how small of a rural community Patagonia is, because a lot of us, including myself, are tuning in from rural Texas.
Awesome. Yeah. So, hi, everybody. Anna Darian. So, I'm the executive director of an organization called Patagonia Area Resource Alliance, PARA for short. We're actually a mining watchdog organization. While we are a very small town, so size-wise, we're about 1 square mile. People like to say there's 1,000 people who live here, but I feel like half of them are traveling somewhere at all given time. So, you're lucky if there's 500. But it's a place with a lot of um, confluences of so many different things. We've got this global company making a mine just upstream. We've got the border wall construction happening about 20 minutes from here. And then we have the Arizona Trail that passes through. It used to pass directly through town and now is just a few miles out of town, although certainly we see hikers. I just saw us passing through some people in the last few weeks. And so, as Matt mentioned, I joined the board. Think I'm official 2 months on the board job of it, but I basically volunteered myself for it. Not that Matt welcomed me, but one of the passions I really had was around strengthening what it means to be a gateway community. I have a background in community and economic development, and I just see a lot of opportunity in both directions, the way the town can benefit from this position that it has, and then also better resources for through hikers, which then sends the word back of, this is Arizona, maybe there's a lot of open white spaces where you'll be alone, but when you do come into a town, you're going to be welcomed with people who are excited to see you. I'm always kind of creeping on the hikers when they are passing through and they look tired and like they just want to recharge their cell phone. But I think it's great when I see them.
I love
So,
it. I love it. And those can be really magical moments too, when you've just been getting your tail kicked out
mhm.
there for days or weeks, and you come in and someone gives you like a cold Coca-Cola. It feels like,
Mhm.
they just gave you $1 million check or something. Okay, my first question for you two is when you think about a trailhead town or a gateway community, what distinguishes a town that truly thrives and embraces the trail versus one that simply just happens to be on the trail?
I think communities that really embrace the nature of a trail passing either through or nearby, uh, but also like just integrating trail culture into the fabric of the town and the town's identity. And the smaller the town, the easier it is, which I think with almost in every other context, that is not the case. It's the opposite. And so when I look at the 19 communities that we consider gateway communities along the Arizona Trail, most of them are very small. They're about the size of the community in which Anna lives. And then some of them are a little bit bigger, like the city of Tucson, about 1 million people, city of Flagstaff, a couple 100,000. But for the most part, we're looking at 1,500 people or fewer. And my experience is that those communities, the ones that really embrace trail community, trail users, those are the ones that really kind of stand out. And when I say stand out, this is mostly based on what we're hearing from long distance trail users. So in addition to social media posts and people that might call or email, which is very rare, what we have is a completion survey. And so if, as an individual, you finish the Arizona Trail, whether you do that all at once on foot or bike or horseback, or as is the case with most people, you finish it over a very long period of time. Because like by show of hands on the call right now, who has 2 months to go for a long walk? Oh, not seeing any hands. Okay. So most people are on the 10-year plan and they're going to do a weekend here and a few days there. And so that over a period of time, you end up completing the trail. And so we do a completion survey, and the information that we glean from that survey, a lot of what we're asking is, yes, how long did it take you? Which direction did you travel? Did you do it alone or with a friend or with a dog or all the things? But really, we ask about how much money did you spend in preparation and then when you were on the trail? Which communities did you visit? Which communities would you visit again? which were really your favorite communities and why. And that information we've been able to share with the communities themselves. So that instead of us having a grading system or a 2, 3, 4, 5 star, instead what we're doing is we're just engaging trail users to say, what was your experience like? And would you go back to these places? My hope is that people have such positive experience in these towns that they're going to want to come back and visit the town itself. And what we're finding is that that is happening over and over again. People have such a positive experience, like in the town of Patagonia, that they make it a point to come back. They find out, "Ooh, what else is happening in this town?" Like in the town of Patagonia, they have an amazing, art fair. In the town of Kearney, Arizona, teeny tiny little Kearney, they have like, a Pioneers Days where they have, rodeo and a celebration and all the things. And so visitors are motivated to come back because of a very positive experience that they had. And I think that to answer your question, Beckie, because I'll go around and around about this stuff forever, is that I think it's towns that really embrace the trail as part of the fabric of their community instead of just being located within close proximity to the trail. Because ultimately, what do trail users want? On the surface, we think that it's food, it's beverage, it's a shower, it's a place to recharge their phones, a place to camp or a place to stay. But beyond that, what they're looking for is a really positive human interaction, really positive connection. Because the xTexas Trail, just like the Arizona Trail, pretty remote, and you're out there in the wilderness for long stretches. And our opportunities to really like reconnect and recharge are happening within these communities. And so therein lies the opportunity for community members to embrace them. And whether that's through signage, which we could talk a little bit more about that if you want to, resources that are made available both in advance and when people get into town, information kiosks, brochures, and then also just friendly people. Um, if I go back in time, like say 20 years, a lot of these communities were not used to seeing long distance backpackers or bike packers yet. And so imagine being in a teeny tiny town and then somebody rolls in smelling pretty bad, looking like they've been out there for a while. You might think like, who is this person? Are they transient? Are they home? Like, what's going on here? But as the town and the trail organization work together to say like, oh, this is kind of what they look like and this is what they're generally looking for. These individuals, instead of being ignored or having the police called on them, instead people would roll down their windows and be like, wow, are you an Arizona Trail through hiker? And so they were embraced and engaged in conversation. And I think that what we have found, and especially what people in small towns have found, is that beyond just the obvious, like say, economic benefits that trail users contribute to their communities, um, they add a interesting color of individuals that normally they don't see. And when I say color, I don't mean skin color. I just mean like characters, like really interesting characters, because we see that there are people from all around the world that come to do the Arizona Trail. So imagine being in fill in the blank community that you live in Sanderson, for instance, and then all of a sudden you have people from literally every country in the world that are passing through. Like, what a great opportunity to get to know a little bit more about them and to show them like what makes you proud of living in this town, in this community.
So cool. Very cool. Okay, my next question. The xTexas Trail is very, very early in our concept phase. Um, it- that being said, we have many towns that are reaching out to us right now. They want to set themselves up for success. And so, what are 2 to 3 things that you would recommend an aspiring trailhead town could go ahead and do right now?
Ooh, Anna, do you have anything to add to that one?
Sure. Well, maybe I'll add a little bit to the last question and come in here. And so I think for this, I almost want to give a little bit of how I even came to this. So I am not, as of present day, a through hiker in the Arizona Trail sense. I like a bed, a shower, things like that. So my version of long distance hiking is more like the Camino de Santiago in Spain, right? Which is maybe the extreme on the commercial scale, if you know anything about particularly the Camino Frances. And so I think when I think about the towns that really made a difference for me and what I think about coming into this work is really, how do I say, meets you with where you're at and the needs that you have. I was somebody who had a fair number of injuries. Maybe it's just a blister. I actually ended up hurting my tibia. I still don't 100% know what it is, but knowing that I was only a few kilometers away from a place that expected people like me that might have certain type of injuries or really underprepared on my socks and I really needed, a certain kind of wool, whatever the case may be. I feel like for me, when I think about a town that's really set up for that, is towns who understand the needs of somebody coming through, particularly if they're at their hardest point, or um, or even certain services like if somebody, I know this is more of a Camino thing, but being able to send your pack ahead or having mail services that are just really geared for you, where you you might not need to be sending it home, you just want to send it to this location or this and that. Just understanding the experience that somebody is going through and knowing that those resources are available in the way it's catered to you, I think is something to really think about. As well as, and I think about this with Patagonia, just having places that people can actually book. A lot of times people are taking 0 days in these small towns. And I know Patagonia, if you ask locals, they think that we have a problem of way too many Airbnbs. I feel that we have the opposite problem, especially because, like I mentioned, we've got this mine that is being constructed. And so a lot of times our hotels are pre-booked by these contractors or all sorts of things. So I actually find that we don't have enough um, amenities for people that want to come through. You mentioned Spear World 100 before we started this call, but this is a gravel race that is led by husband and wife duo Xander and Heidi, and they partner with the Arizona Trail a lot and really want to bolster that trail town identity. But one of the first things that they did, or a few things that they did when they came into town that can speak to what it looks like to be a trail town, is they set up an actual pub, like a true pub where there's outdoor seating so you can throw your dirty backpack or your bike and everything down and grab a drink. There's live music. They have a bike shop so you can get bike repair done. And then they put together a little small 9-bedroom hotel that people can check out. And it's just this sort of just checking the list of what people need to feel like they want to be there. And so those are some of the things that come to mind. I mean, the list could go on literally forever, but those are some of the things. Oh, thank you, Becky. And
Yeah.
there's a link to that Spear World 100. So,
Anna, will you share with folks what a 0 day is?
oh, sorry. I love a 0 day. It's my favorite kind of. I am representing the people who don't do 30-mile days in the heats. So a day, a rest day, right? So a day where you're, rather than carrying on, you might stay a night or two just to give yourself a break, charge all your things, do some laundry. That would be another one, a nice laundromat. Our laundromat right now is quite scary. But those types of things that you don't think about, but yeah,
That's a
sorry.
good one. No, that was so well done. Yeah, I think that Anna covered most of it for sure. I would say what sets up a town for long-term success. One of them would be recognizing what the consumers, in this case, like long-distance trail users, what their needs are. So one of the things that we did as an organization, which I think I've shared with Becky, is that we put together kind of like a an ideal list of within a community, this is what long distance trail users are looking for, beyond just the obvious a place to stay or a place to camp, a place to do laundry, a place to get food and good coffee and like those types of things. But this is generally what the community is looking for. So identifying, what the needs of these very unique visitors are. And then also, I think identifying ambassadors. So people within the community who are designated ambassadors so that when they see an individual, they can be like, hey, welcome to town. This is where the laundromat is. Do you need a place to camp? Did you know that this place offers a discount to Texas Trail users? Something like that. I think that those are a couple, I think, very simple, like beginning step things that kind of sets up a town for success. The next level of that would be, if the town is incorporated, then developing like whether it's a resolution or something where the town formally designates itself as, oh, we recognize we are a trail town of the xTexas Trail, and or we have a trail day or something like that, so that the town itself and the community members begin to really embrace the trail as part of their community, not something that's been put on them, but something that they're actively part of. And I think that's where, like, there are a lot of things that the Arizona Trail Association has done right. And the development of our Gateway Community Program was not done right. When I go back in time and look at how it was done, essentially somebody within the organization, predates me, looked at which towns were located within a couple of miles of the trail or that the trail went straight through and said, okay, we're going to designate them as
Hmm.
gateway communities. Then we're going to go into the town and say, hey, you've been designated a gateway community. And here's what people are going to want and need. And here's what they expect. And like, I came from a town of 1,500 people. If somebody from the big city came in and said, you've been designated and this is what you need to do, I would have shut the door. And so I think a lot of what we've done is just taking a look at, oh, okay, although that's what happened in the past, let's re-engage these communities and make it an opt-in. Who wants to be a gateway community? And how can we support you in your town? How can we promote you? Where should we direct people? And we even set up like a page on our website where individuals within the gateway community can say, yes, I want to be a volunteer or a trail angel, or, oh, I own a local business and this is the best way to promote it. And so it's really like towns may say, no, we don't want anything to do with it. That's fine. I'm going to come back to them in a year or two and say, the town south of you and north of you has got this going on. Isn't that cool? Um, but I think that the other thing worth mentioning, especially in terms of like 0 days, is the story that I hear over and over again is that somebody gets into a town and their plan was to maybe not even stay the night, maybe just like, do some laundry or get a, meal that is not, coming in a freeze-dried packet and then kind of move on. But if their experiences are positive, they're going to stay for 1 or 2 or 3 days before they move on. And, from the heart, like that's a really wonderful experience, both for that individual and for the community. And then from the economic side, every day that somebody stays there, they're spending exponentially more money. And so when we can show them a very positive experience, the chances are that they're going to stay there longer and then they're going to probably come back and visit over and over again.
That's so insightful. Thank you so much. My next question is, how long does it typically take for the benefits of being a gateway community to materialize in these local communities?
I
I'm
think
gonna
a lot
let
of it
Matt.
happens.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. I'm gonna let Matt take it, but I did just want to point out something I put into the chat, which is this gateway communities list that Matt was talking about. So
Thank
you're
you.
able to download that if you want, but Matt's gonna definitely take this question. Just
Nice. Thank you, Anna. Let's see. How long? I think it happens naturally. I think that as the xTexas Trail develops, towns that are located within close proximity are going to start to see trail users that they haven't seen before. They're going to start to see new patterns. And I think that in small towns, everybody knows everybody. Everybody sees what's going on. Everybody already understands like recreation patterns, visitation patterns based around special events, time of year, things like that. Long distance trails have the opportunity to really kind of diversify that, which I think is wonderful for everybody involved. So I think it's going to happen naturally on its own. But then the more that the town is promoting themselves as a trail town, then they're going to be attracting lots of people who are like Anna, who are not out there for all 800 miles or who are not out there, looking to do like huge miles. The majority of people are going to come and visit a town and go hiking or biking or whatever for the day. And then they're going to come back to town and eat and stay the night and all the things. And so I think that sometimes these long distance trails, like the highest profile users are these long distance trail users, but the vast majority of people that are going to be using the trail, who stand to spend a lot more money than just the average dirtbag who's out there for all 800 miles or whatever, are the families and individuals and weekend warriors. And so I think the town understanding the variety of different trail users that they may see, and then also, I won't say marketing, but really appealing to these trail users, I think that you'll start to see like literally immediate benefits. Um, there were a few towns, Fruita, Colorado, Prescott, Arizona, and Moab, Utah. The three of them did independent economic impact studies about, trail users in towns. Now, a lot of their recreation is not long distance trails, it's just trails in general. But they looked at like investing in trail development and then the economic return. And then the aggregated result of that study, what I recall, and this is about 10 years old, is that when a community, could be a town, could be a county, could be a city, could be even the state. But when a municipality of some kind invested in trail construction, that they saw a 7-to-1 return within 3 to 5 years. And I don't have an economic, background. However, I don't know of many industries where you could say, oh, if you invest a dollar, you're going to see a 700% return in 3 to 5 years. That's almost unheard of. But trails are a low cost investment and a very low cost maintenance infrastructure. However, the return is quite high. And although a lot of what we're talking about right now is visitors, right? Visitors coming to town, visitors spending money. But I think that going back to the question about what sets up a community for like long-term success, I would say that towns that are using the resource as much as the visitors are, that really sets you up for success. And so engaging the community in the trail construction and where does it go and how does the town link to a longer distance trail? I think if locals are using it and recognizing it as like, this is our resource, this is a shared resource, then it becomes something much more than just like another tourist amenity, like the giant ball of string or the copper man or, whatever.
The world's largest pistachio.
Thank you.
Every time I drive like near Alamogordo, New Mexico, I'm like, oh, once again, I don't think I'm gonna be stopping for that. Amazing. This is so insightful. Anna, you might have some really good recommendations for my next question, which is how do you get buy-in from your community leaders, your local business owners? How do you get them to see this as a worthwhile investment?
Mm. So the context I'll further add to this is I've only lived in Patagonia since June, July of last year. I basically started this role and with that. So I'd be curious to see Matthew's experience with this town maybe. But what I've seen, because I've done sort of informal reconnaissance around how much does Patagonia even see themselves as a trail town, gateway community, where did this lie? And what I've learned is in a t small town, and I think Patagonia is pretty common with this, is just about everything new is going to have a little bit of a, especially if the people doing the new thing are too new in town. And I've been asking Patagonia, how long do you have to live here before you can have an idea and it's not seen as an outsider? I've heard 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, multi-generations. So all that being said, what I have seen is that sometimes it just takes time and a show don't tell kind of thing. Because they're getting back to that example of the Xander and Heidi that made this little pub. I mean, the lore around these two young people who came in and did all these things. I mean, it's very divisive in terms of how people feel about it, but they will have that conversation about it at the pub that they built. You know what I mean? And I think that it's just a funny example of kind of if you build it, they will come. And especially if you build it and locals utilize it as well, then I think that that helps the buy-in. But I don't know how well, and I want to turn it over to Matt for this because he's been doing this way longer than I've even been trying to figure out how to do anything. But I don't know how well people understand things until they see it. And that maybe that's just, I don't know. I don't want to be pessimistic.
No, I think you're, yeah, 100% correct. And I think it really does have to come from within, right? That if it's an
Mhm.
outside trail organization telling or even making suggestions. So I think a lot of times asking questions instead of, providing directives, I think is essential. And then really working with the town to be like, here's what the resource is. Here's what the general, this is what people are looking for. This is the type of trail user. How can you as a community, would you like to participate? And if so, how? And if you need recommendations, here's what other towns, here's what other long distance trails have done. Because what we're talking about here, this is nothing new, right? Like this is actually, this is what people, I think about people hiking long distances. Like we've been doing this for since the beginning of time. It's what we're meant to do. And having opportunities for, call it what you want, resupply, community engagement, all the types of things like that's also been done like, forever. Look at like, the salt trade across the Sahara or the Silk Road, whatever. Like this is nothing new. And so I think that if we want to build something that's sustainable and cohesive, it's really got to happen at the grassroots level. And that grassroots is within the communities. And so maybe it's a community leader that you have a conversation with, or a mayor if the town's a little bit bigger or whatever. So yeah, I think that the ideas coming from within and then trail organization providing recommendations as needed, I think is essential. And then really the proof is in the pudding. Like Anna said, like people really need to see trail users coming in and what they look like. And also, I think Becky and Melissa and people that are associated with the organization being able to answer the relevant questions and also address like what are the concerns? I think early on, especially new trails and trail development, people have a variety of concerns, none of which are legit, but they have the concerns, and so let them have them. And then you could say, okay, I hear you. Yes, you're concerned about trash. Yes, you're concerned about people camping in the park. But let's talk about that and let's talk about ways that we can make sure that that doesn't happen. Because I think there's a lot more speculation about the negatives than there are necessarily embracing the positives. But yeah, it just takes time.
Mhm. If I can add one thing, and it's actually something I've been thinking about since Matt said it earlier in a different way, but from a storytelling perspective and how this gets fun, in certain places, I see it in Patagonia, the the story can't be, let's build this great amenity for outsiders to utilize this via tourism, even though there's a benefit locally to having tourism dollars. I feel that that in and of itself creates this, oh, well, we don't want to be Colorado or what. I feel like right now Colorado's the big thing that people blast. It used to be California. Now it's Californians moving to Colorado and ruining it. Um, but I hear that a lot is we don't want things to change. So I think framing it as tourism and outside people benefiting from the thing as the primary benefactor, I've seen that backfire definitely. So I think Matt had said earlier about this being amenities that people, locals are using, I think is very important. And I need to think about that after he said it to, because I see the benefit of it. Like, oh, these cool people from everywhere. And for some people, we're like, we don't want people from everywhere here. So, know your audience, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think these are great points. And a real concern of being like a rural Texan is, okay, if we're going to increase visitation to this town, how do we also preserve our values and our way of life that we really love? Um, we choose to be out here in the middle of nowhere. And so those are conversations that we're navigating all day, or not all day, all of the time. And there's a lot of unique opportunities to really like lean in and say like, okay, well, how can we celebrate your values and your way of life? And like Matt was saying, what are the experiences that people can have in this town so they end up coming back? Um, and anytime, there's something really special about like knowing this one small town in another state that you really enjoy going to. It kind of feels like a nice little secret. I know we have someone, Pam, here from like the Santa Fe to Taos Trail, and you all know where Penasco, New Mexico is. I don't think anyone else will, but like that's one of those places for me that's like, I gotta get back to Penasco. So thank you so much. I have one more question before we open this up for Q&A. Um, what is an example of a town that you feel like got it right in terms of being a gateway community to the Arizona Trail?
So I have to pick among 19.
I know.
And there's one on the call. Thanks a lot. Uh, well, we have talked
I've
about.
asked this question of the former volunteer manager, so I'm curious to see what you would say. And he did not list Patagonia to me, so I won't
Ah.
be offended.
There are many, and we do encourage friendly competition among them, just so you know. But the one that comes to mind, because there are probably, I would say, six that I could tell great stories about, but I'll just pick one, and that'd be the town of Kearney. Kearney does not have much going on, folks. Kearney is tiny. It was established as a mining town, and the mine came and went. Very few people live there. And although the mine is somewhat operational nearby, very few people, kind of continue to work at the mine. So they've actually been struggling to redefine themselves, even though none of them will ever admit to saying that. And so I think once the Arizona Trail was developed in this area, it doesn't go that close to town. You really have to get off the trail, walk along a dirt road for a while to get to a paved road, and then find a way, walk along the paved road or whatever, to get to the town. And so a couple of the things that are standouts for me are that there's a pizza place. Really, there was two places to eat in this town. So really only two restaurants to choose from. No fast food at all, just like local mom and pop places, but there was a pizza place. And then what they realized is that people were walking these long distances on a paved road just to get to town to have pizza because they'd been out on a very long remote segment of trail. And so the pizza place did not do pizza delivery, but what they realized is, oh, it would be easy for us to deliver pizza because it's only 4.5 miles away. So they put up a sign at the trailhead that said, "Want pizza? Call this number." So what they started seeing is that they were delivering pizzas repeatedly to this one location. And so no, people weren't coming into to the restaurant necessarily, but they were, I mean, imagine getting pizza delivered to you literally in the middle of nowhere after having, eaten ramen for a week. And so that really kind of built up the lore around this place. You could call and they'll deliver pizza to you under the bridge. And then what they found is that once they delivered the pizza, most people were like, "Hey, could we get a ride into town?" So then that led from pizza delivery to their own Trail Angel program. And what they did is they just started calling friends of the restaurant and saying, "Would you be willing to pick people up from time to time and shuttle them into town?" And the answer was yes, that's no problem. I got a pickup truck, they can sit in the back. And so suddenly they built their own Trail Angel program. They're transporting people into town. Once people are in town, they're eating, they're shopping, they're staying at the hotel. The hotel now offers discounts and they have like, all these through hiker rooms and bunks. There's a place to camp in the back if people don't want to pay for a room. And then the local market started seeing that people were coming in and asking for pretty much the same things. Where can I find these dozen or 20 products? And so instead of saying, okay, aisle four and aisle seven, and they're against the back wall, they actually consolidated them into a little island. And it says, Arizona Trail like necessities or something like that. And so none of these were suggestions from our organization. This happened naturally within the community, but we can use these as examples of, oh, this is what Kearney is doing. And when I say this is what Kearney is doing to other towns, they say, "Kearney? Like, are you kidding? There's nothing going on there." Well, there is. And they didn't have a town slogan and they didn't have a moniker, but now unofficially they call themselves, which we all embrace, the friendliest town on the Arizona Trail. And the other towns don't like that very much, but they were the first ones to get it and to brand themselves as that. And so we use that a lot to say, oh, while you're out there, please visit Kearney. It's the friendliest town on the Arizona Trail. And people find that that is true, that they're embraced. They have a place to eat, a place to stay, a place to do laundry, and then they'll probably come back and visit again at some point. So I feel like that's a community that got it right. And then the only other amenity that they don't yet have that another town has done is that they built a trail from the town to the Arizona National Scenic Trail itself. That's the town of Superior. And they built a 6 mile trail through, I think it crosses through three pieces of private property and then a little bit of national forest land. But they went through all the permissions to build a trail so that instead of the shuttling and the driving and all the things from Trail Angels, that people can literally get to an intersection and continue to head off into the wilderness or to hike into town. They're all hiking into town. And so that is another amenity that communities who are not on the trail itself, like Patagonia now, that they can add so that it maintains kind of a trail experience for visitors. But more importantly, it links the town itself to the trail. Therein lies the opportunity for youth and people who live within the town itself to experience it.
Wow.
That's
That is
fantastic.
such a special example. That is amazing. I gotta get to Kearney now. All right, let's move on to question and answers. I see we have one in the chat from Diana. She is located in Bandera, Texas. We find that the same small group in our small town volunteers for everything and are overextended. How do you broaden the net in a small town with few people?
Yep, therein lies yeah, I think the biggest challenge of being from a small town. And I hear that, feel that. Like I said, I came from a tiny rural community, and the same businesses were being hit up to support the same functions and fundraisers at every school, like everything. So what we found is that, especially in medium-sized to larger towns, as people start to learn more about these trails, they want to be involved. Just because it's an interesting cultural thing. And I think that we're all inherently selfless. Like when we are participating in acts of service, we are like living our best selves. And so, like Anna mentioned, she's not out there to hike all 800 miles. A lot of volunteers won't want to be involved in certain capacities. Through the Trail Angel program, what we've tried to do is enlist the help of volunteers, but it's really up to them what they do, whether that's caching water in dry sections of the trail, or even sometimes providing a guest room for people that want to stay overnight, or maybe shuttling from Trailhead to town or whatever. So that there are a variety of like, oh, here are ways that you can participate and that you could support, but it's completely and totally up to you. We've also found that the most of what our volunteers do within the Arizona Trail Association is like trail construction and maintenance. But anybody who's ever done that or done landscaping, especially in remote areas, it's very challenging work. And it is not for everybody physically and all the other things. And so by participating as like a community volunteer, what you're able to do is something that is not nearly as physical, but you're still participating in the trail community. And I think that the rewards that come along with that are incredible, especially when you experience the kindness of strangers and the gratitude that comes along with that for people that are visitors. So when it comes to recruitment, I mean, that's a tough thing when resources are spread so thin. But I think that the more that the trail grows in popularity, hopefully the more that people want to be involved.
Beckie, can I follow up on that, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I missed the first 6 or 8 minutes of this, so if this is repetitive, I apologize. Um, I'm curious about how gateway towns structure this effort. Do you have somebody that's a quarterback? Do you form an organization? Is every town different? Because I don't think you can get much done unless you have some sort of leadership. And so I'm curious how this leadership evolves in the gateway towns.
Yeah, it's nice when there is some type of leader. And so maybe that comes from the trail organization. And in our case, that's absolutely where it came from, kind of the recommendation of, oh, here's an opportunity. Now there's a national scenic trail located either in your town or near your town. And then how would you like to participate? Here's what trail users are looking for. Here's what other towns are doing. And then what we try to do is convene kind of a gateway community working group for those who want to participate a couple of times a year. That way, we're as an organization, we're just the convener, and then people within these towns are able to share stories and resources like, oh, this is what we're doing with Trail Angels. Here's what our town is missing that we're really trying to work on. And to go back to another example of a community, the town of Superior is one of those. Very small community. And like Anna mentioned in her town of Patagonia, there's not a lot of lodging. Like if you go to the town of Superior, there's really only two options. A really low end, use at your own risk motel, or and I don't know why they have these two, or a very high end, recently built, like $200 a night, like historic, lodge, but nothing really in the middle. And oftentimes the one that I mentioned previously, the low end is booked by people that are working, at the mine or doing contracting work nearby. So if trail users get into town, there's actually nowhere for them to stay. And the town recognized this, and then they started to talk to private property owners and said, who would, allow space for people to camp? So they started to do that. And then the question was, who can build a campground and can we get this properly permitted? So they actually worked with the county because I think might be an incorporated town, but the mayor worked with the county to find, oh, how can we get this properly permitted so people that are able to camp here and will build outdoor showers and all the things. So it was kind of responding to the need, but it really came from within the community itself. So while an organization can provide like the structure and offer to do some of the promotion, a lot of what towns are doing is really completely and totally up to them.
Super exciting. Jennifer,
Jennifer,
you have a
yeah,
question?
sorry.
Hi, can you give some specific examples of some of the positive experiences that hikers had while they're in town? Like what was it, what did they feel or experience specifically that they said they had a positive experience? What was it? Or what were they?
Anna, do you have anything to share on that one?
No, I was gonna say I'm definitely turning to you, but I will say I'd be I will ask that you share the story of the husband and wife duo that won the award at this year's annual meeting. I forgot what their names were, but I mean there wasn't a dry eye in the house hearing about them. Um, I could follow up with different things, but that was a good story.
Yeah, I think that so every trail is unique, right? xTexas Trail, unlike any other in the system. Arizona Trail, also kind of very unique. Um, one of the things that really makes, say, the Arizona Trail different from, say, like the Appalachian Trail, which is kind of the great grandfather of the long distance trail systems in the US, Appalachian Trail was intentionally built to link communities. So it's like a greenway path to link communities between Georgia and Maine. The Arizona Trail is the complete opposite in that it's supposed to be this remote, wild experience where it never goes through cities, it doesn't pass through towns, but about every week, on average, you would pass either by or into a community. And so I assumed naively for the longest time that people were attracted to the Arizona Trail because of the natural beauty, canyons, forests, deserts, mountains, all those things. And I was really enlightened to the fact of how important communities were when an independent filmmaker reached out to us. And this is when I first started, so like 15 years ago, and said, I've done movies in the past. I'm going to do a through hike of the Arizona Trail and I'm going to do a documentary film. I said, that sounds great. He interviewed me, he said, what are the highlights? And I'm like, ooh, the Grand Canyon and Saguaro National Park and this mountain range and this water source and this giant juniper tree, all the natural resources, right? That's what I focused on. And so I assumed he listened. He didn't, or maybe he did, but his experience. And when the film was produced, I was like, I can't wait to see this. And I would say that the natural beauty made an occasional mention. Maybe 15% of the whole film was, sunsets and these vast, landscapes, but almost the entire film was about interesting characters and gateway communities. And I don't think that that was his intention. I don't think that was the movie script. I think it was his experience. And it's because after these, long periods of like being alone in nature, that being embraced by a community and having human interaction were the things that he remembered most. And I've heard stories like that over and over and over again. It's the communities that people remember most. It's the communities that people talk about, and it's the interactions that they have with people in towns that are really the standout, kind of stories and experiences. I know that early on, Beckie mentioned Melissa's like chief storytelling officer. Anna also has a background in storytelling, and that when we tell stories about wild places, we can get a little ooh and ah. But when we tell stories about interesting characters, those are the stories we remember forever. And so I think that when I hear stories about like what people shared, a lot of times it's the kindness of strangers. And the one story that I'll share came from somebody that we actually had speak at our annual meeting a few years ago. And it's because once I heard his story, I was like, wow, I want everybody to hear this story. And he was a combat veteran who was in charge of like explosive devices. And he was in Iraq and Afghanistan, is a high-ranking military official. So suffice it to say, and I can't, condense his hour-long story into a few minutes, but suffice it to say, he had seen the worst of the worst. And everybody that he worked with under him was being blown up or attempting to, dismantle, IEDs. And he just saw everybody that he worked with killed over and over again. So eventually he retired early and he was suffering, tried to take his own life, was suffering from depression, his family was falling apart. And then he found an organization called Warrior Hike, where they sponsor military veterans to do long distance trips on America's like national scenic trails. And there's no therapeutic programming integrated into this. It's just to get out there into nature for a couple of months. And then what they found is that people recalibrate naturally. And what he shared with me is that it restored his faith in humanity because of the kindness of strangers. And when you're being shot at and you're seeing people killed and you're involved in, active military duty, especially in some of the conflicts that he had seen, you lose all faith in all of it. But then just going for a long walk and people being kind to him, welcoming them, into their homes, it changed his life. So much so that when he returned home to White Plains, New York, he told his wife and kids, he said, we're moving to Arizona. And so his experience on the Arizona Trail convinced him to leave the area that he lived for most of his life and to buy a home in Sierra Vista, which is near the southern terminus of the Arizona Trail, and started a new life based on the kindness of strangers. And I think that is something that people will find over and over again. Because when you're out there for long periods of time, you have a chance to think a lot, for better or worse. And then if you have a positive experience, especially from somebody you don't know, I mean, the impact of that interaction could be, yeah, lifelong lasting.
That's amazing.
I have no follow-up to that. Amazing. Oh, wow.
It is really interesting when you're doing these through hikes, how like humanity just starts to come through, like everyone that you interact with. I was doing a through hike this winter, 120 miles through Big Bend Ranch State Park and the national park. And there was this one day we'd just been crossing the desert with no shade and like so much water on our backs. And I am trudging up this hill, this asphalt hill. And this motorcycle passes me, and then he makes a U-turn and comes back and is like, "Do you want to ride?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Um, and I just like pack on, climbed on the back, and he's like, "Where do you need to go?" And I was like, "I only need to go a mile and a half, but I'm gonna ride on this motorcycle there." And man, that was the highlight of that day because it just like I'd gotten so beat down. And that's all it takes, right? Is like something really small.
Well, one
Does
of the things I want to bring up about that and touch on what Matthew said is that people do decide to stay longer if a place is charming and it has good, and also I think we need to reiterate how hungry people are but that people need to understand the ramen scenario. And I know that Jacob, who's on the call with us in El Paso, he brought beautiful snacks and things to Charlie and Pam and Richard a few days ago. And you could see the thrill on Charlie's face that there was fresh food. And that Charlie just over the years has told me stories. And what he remembers are the baked goods. So, basically it's where are the best breakfast burritos and where are the best, baked goods.
Yeah, informally, we put together a list of like, this is what people are looking for. It's delicious food in some like small like mom and pop restaurants, right? It's
Yeah,
not chain restaurants. It's not
right.
Applebee's. It's a
Never.
place that they've
No.
never been to before. It's high calorie, high density, delicious food, baked goods for sure, good coffee, beer, and ice cream. Unique places. And yeah, you're right that people can eat an enormous amount of calories, 3 meals. Like I've seen it happen. I've done it myself. And if anybody's ever done like massive long distance, endeavors, you know that it's very easy to consume 5 or 6 thousand calories in a meal, and then sleep really well and then get back out there on the trail. So,
Well, and I think that I think we should actually dig into that a little bit because we have a question here from Sarah. I'm not going to pronounce your last name correctly, Sarah, but how many people come through
mm,
the towns? But I kind of want you to kind of lean on that a little, Matthew, if you would,
yeah,
because we're talking about people that are coming and they're very hungry and they're like, that breakfast burrito is really good. So, in 2 hours, I'm going to come back and get your pot roast.
yeah,
And so, like, a small group of people could come through a small town,
yeah.
and in 2 days, they could spend several $100s on meals that you might not, they could have more impact than you realize they could have.
Yeah, very good point. And I forget that sometimes too when we talk about number of people, average number of like say meals or hotel rooms, but people are probably eating a lot more than the average visitor. Um, we don't have like a permit system for the Arizona National Scenic Trail. And so the only way that we have an opportunity to kind of gauge visitation is through the completion survey, but not everybody who completes the trail does the survey. And then just in talking to people in towns themselves. It's challenging sometimes to tell who's a day user and who's a long distance trail user. Sometimes it's obvious, but not always. But what we know is that on average, there's about 400 people that are doing a long distance trip on the Arizona Trail every year. And what we think is that the long distance trail users are 5% of overall trail users. But it's really hard to tell because, again, without a more like comprehensive economic impact study on the trail itself and looking at all these communities, we don't really know. What we've definitely seen since 2020, thanks to COVID and also popularity of long distance trails, is that trail use just goes up every year. It has not gone down and it's not going down anytime soon. And one of the benefits for the xTexas Trail is that anybody who's ever done a long distance trip, your life has changed forever and you probably can't go back to what you were doing before. And that's a spoiler. So I don't tell anybody this. If I hear, oh, I'm going to do the Pacific Crest Trail, I'm like, that's great. Can't wait to talk to
I
you
froze.
after you're done. Because once you're done, you don't go back to what you were doing before. You say, which trail is next? Appalachian Trail, Continental Divide, Florida, the Ice Age Trail, like the list kind of goes on and on. And we're at a point now where people have been doing these long distance trails. The Camino is another one. I mean, I meet so many people that their first long distance trail is the Camino de Santiago, and then maybe it's, the West Coast Trail, in Canada and in other places. So when after people do one trail, they want to do another and another. And the benefit xTexas has is you have an opportunity to be the next great trail. And you have a community of people that are now 20 years deep that have been doing these trails, and now they've done them all, or they've done most of them. So they're looking for the next great adventure. And I think xTexas could be that.
That kind of goes into, and sorry, Anna, I just want to make sure that you guys know that. So Diana had a follow-up kind of, what is your view of the opportunity of the xTex? You
Yeah.
kind of touched on that, Matthew. And so I want to leave that out there. And then Anna, I'm sorry, I cut you off. You had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, well, I just want to add a little bit of a reality check on it too. So Matthew's going to be your voice of like eternal optimism, and then I just want to bring in another thing because I mean literally I can look out my front door and I can see when through hikers are coming through and not. And I do think that while there is a lot of opportunity for the economic benefits of through hikers, I think it's important for communities to understand that there's kind of a season for both of them, right? So at this point, with Arizona Trail, they go northbound from the south end, give or take around March and stuff. I saw a wave of them a few weeks ago. I'm not seeing hardly any at this point, right? So we're not talking about the steady. If the idea is that this through hike is going to be your whole bread and butter, you're kind of looking at about a month give or take on one end and a month give or take on in the fall. So in the fall, obviously they go southbound. So that's also just something to keep in mind. I mean, on one hand, the positive for people who are worried about a bunch of derelicts walking through town, those people should be comforted that it's not as many as you think and it's not all year round as far as the through hikers, right? It is really the day users that are using this most of the time, to Matt's point. But it also should be, realistic in your expectations. Of course, biking is a whole other thing, and I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with the Texas Trail, but at this point, I think we're pretty much done for the spring season of northbound folks. So just something to think about.
Yeah, we are very much
Seasonality for sure.
a seasonal trail. We have a question here. Beckie, you want to read the question from David from
Yes.
Red Rock?
David asked, and I think this is for us at the xTex, as a property and business owner along the trail near Red Rock, Texas, how can we stay in touch to be able to work with you all going forward? And he's saying we offer camping, disc golf, small cabin rental, good fun. We absolutely want to stay in touch with you, David, and I am posting a link right now in the chat. So we are building our database, and soon we're going to start convening more opportunities like this. The plan right now is to really focus on like education and what does it look like to be a trailhead town and leverage the opportunity. And then that education will build more into like the niche pieces of it, or I should say the more strategic pieces of it. Like, okay, you want to build an equestrian trail from the xTexas to your town. Let's talk about how that gets done. And we can there are going to be pieces of that we're going to be able to disseminate at scale and in these sorts of settings. And then there's also going to be situations where offline or on Zoom, it's a small group of us and we have that conversation and strategize with you. But yeah, if you visit this link that I put in the chat and fill that out, we will have your information documented as you're interested in being a trailhead town.
I do have one more question that I wanted to ask Matthew and Anna about. You've talked about your annual meeting a couple of times, and I would just like to know what that is. Like, who comes to that? How is it hosted?
Yeah, as a nonprofit organization, it's a pretty old school model of nonprofits to hold like an annual meeting for their membership. We have a membership of about 2,000 people, but only 200 people show up to the meeting. And who shows up is like it's trail angels, it's gateway community representatives, it's average trail users, it's business partners. It's pretty much a cross section of everybody who participates in the trail and the trail experience. Land managers, I mean, it's a little bit of everybody, but we host that annually, kind of before the season really kicks off. And so for the Arizona Trail, the busy season is spring, like Anna mentioned, really kind of starting in March. So we try to host it kind of end of January, early February. And it's something that's actually just in our organizational bylaws that we're supposed to do. But because we're spread out over the entire state, like a 800-mile trail, 19 different communities, lots of different land owners and managers, it's really the only time of the whole year that we come together in person as a community. And we found that it's really valuable for people to come together to share stories, to honor outstanding volunteers or Gateway community representatives and things like that. So yeah, it's something that as an organization we see a lot of value in. There's also these trail days. We used to do a great big one in the town of Flagstaff, which is, like a small city. And that was just an opportunity to have like an outdoor festival with music and, information booths and things like that. Flagstaff is really where the trail was born. That's where Dale Shewalter, sorry, Beckie got it better than I did. Dale Shewalter, where he lived and the idea that AZT was born. And so, yeah, we used to hold a trail day there. COVID shut that down. We didn't bring it back, but we've encouraged other communities that if you do want to have a trail days, like here's the formula for that, just as a way to celebrate the trail, to welcome people from outside the town into the town to get to experience it. But yeah, I think the in-person gathering is pretty nice when you can pull it off.
Super exciting. We are a few minutes over, so I want to be cognizant of people's time and also letting folks get to their evening. But I do want to point out one thing, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dale set out in 1985, and the Arizona Trail wasn't formally completed until 2011. That's correct. So these long distance trail endeavors are very long endeavors. I
Yeah,
can't think of a better way to say that. And right now the xTexas Trail is in like maybe 1986 comparatively. In terms of like the journey that we have ahead of us. And your trail is 800 miles. Ours is probably at minimum going to be 1,500.
dang. Yeah,
Yeah.
big job ahead of you.
Sorry, I know we're over time. Where's the starting and the ending place of this trail?
Great question. So this trail goes east to west. Our eastern terminus is in South Toledo Bend, which is not really a town. And then it ends at the Texas-New Mexico border in El Paso.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's basically so Charlie is a native Texan. He was born in Dallas, but he's lived away and done many other things since. And he started doing long distance trails when we still lived in Long Beach, California, and then when we moved up to the Pacific Northwest, he needed to be in the sun, so he started doing trails. And basically, he was in Lake Tahoe in June, in almost waist deep snow, hiking the Texas Rim. And he called me and he said, I have our next big idea. These long distance trails are impassable at times when Texas is perfect. So he tried to do a couple of trails that he got into fires, he got into bad weather, snow in June in Lake Tahoe. And basically he came back with Ride with GPS and a map and decided to go through all the parts of rural Texas that he calls target rich. And so the trail goes like this through Texas, because people are like, it's only 800 miles wide. How is it 1,500 miles? It's because Charlie had to make sure that it went through the most rural and rugged parts of the Hill Country, which Bandera is part of, and it had to go through Big Bend and Fort Davis Mountains, Guadalupe Peak, etc. So yeah, that's how it got to be so large.
Which is going to be
Amazing.
very worth the
So
extra
exciting.
500 miles.
Yeah, so exciting.
Gosh.
And yes, daunting, major challenges ahead, but this is what we do. And I think that the benefit is that we, both xTexas and also Arizona Trail, we get to follow in the footsteps of others, Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and these other long distance trails. And you'll have a lot of support from the National Trails community. So I applaud your efforts and hope that we can continue to support whatever you're working on.
Thank you guys so much for being with us today. This is so valuable to us. We really appreciate your generosity.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beckie, for
Absolutely.
coming up with the idea and making it happen.
Absolutely. Grateful to be a part of this. Everyone, have a wonderful evening. We did record this, so we'll send you the recording, and we are excited for what's to come. Thank you for being a part of this project.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Happy
Thank you.
trails.